Hello and welcome to Practical Intuition with Kay. I'm just realizing this show may have a new name by the time my today's guest is a guest on the show. So I'm going to say them both. Hello and welcome to Practical Intuition with Kay and Art, Creativity, and Wellbeing. I am Kay. I am a coach and a good listener. I am an artist. I'm a through hiker who used to need a wheelchair. I'm a memoir author, and I wrote a memoir about that experience.
Mm.
And right now, I am in my capacity as podcaster, and I'm super, super, super excited because I'm here today with a woman who uh, is super inspiring, first of all. Someone who has created an entire division of a university based on her passion and her what she sees as well-being for folks in the speech and language kind of area. And I'm gonna just welcome you right on now, Katrina Miller. Welcome and thank you very much for being here. I can't wait to get into all of what we have to talk about today.
Thank you so much, Kay. I appreciate you inviting me. I'm very excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, yeah. Me too. And we so I think what I'd love to start with is because we basically, I don't know, I feel like we have a bit of a free flowing, kind of engagement already. We've had one very delightful conversation, and I got to know you a little bit in that conversation, and it seems like your work goes really, really deep for you. And so I really was curious, kind of what are the roots of that? Like had you always, even as a child, been interested in speech and language pathology? Is this as you got older? Yeah.
It's funny you say that. Often I've met students along the way that have some family member or something that triggered it. But I always enjoyed helping. And
Mm.
I remember as a teenager, I was a candy striper. And I say that and laugh because I'm really dating myself. And for people who don't know what candy stripers are, they're volunteers, and they were known by their red and white uniforms that they wore.
Mm.
I was a candy striper, and I really enjoyed that medical component. In the process of that, I took a sign language class in high school. And as I
Mm.
look back in terms of the evolution of special education, it was during that time where it was fairly new, special education, and especially public education for the population of special education children. And I took a sign language class, and it was really exciting. And the design was we would be interpreters for our colleagues, our high school students. Of course, looking back now, that was not really a good idea, but it sparked something in me that I said, well, I think I would enjoy teaching this population,
Mm.
hearing impaired population. So I met a lot of peers during that time, and I learned sign language, and I kind of got immersed in the deaf culture. And as I was looking for universities, then we didn't have the computer where you just plugged in the name. We had to go get that big occupational book and look up the different occupations. And as I was doing my research as a high schooler, I kept seeing this word speech pathologist, speech pathologist. And it kind of sparked my curiosity. So I started doing a little bit of research, and I said, this sounds like an interesting career. So it just so happened that as a candy striper, I asked the person in charge of the volunteers if I could meet the hospital speech pathologist. He
Mm.
said, sure. And a rarity, it was a Caucasian male, which is it's rare as a speech pathologist, but not rare as overall in terms of the field. So this wonderful gentleman, I cannot even remember his name, but I can still see him so vividly,
Mm.
welcomed me in his office, and he shared all the wonderful things that speech language pathologists do. And it really sparked a love in the profession and the variety, and thus started my path on the way to being a speech language pathologist.
Wow. And not that I'm asking you necessarily to remember word for word, but what were some of the things that he communicated to you about, like, what really resonated about it? Why did you end
Well,
up feeling that way?
one thing that really stood out, and I think it's funny now, is because I was a volunteer, I would come after hours to
Okay.
work because it was after school, and he waited around for that. So I thought that initially that was something that meant he was really interested in the next generation of speech pathologists and the
Yeah.
field, just to say, because it could easily have been, oh, I don't, work after that time. I leave at 3 or 4. So that was one of the first things that he stayed. He thought there was value even in talking about the career to a
Mm,
teenager. About
mm,
it. That was one of the first things. And the fact that you could really make a difference in someone's life. If you've
yeah.
ever had even laryngitis and you know how frustrating it is not to be able to communicate, and you think about the importance of communication and being able to give that back to someone, it just seemed very intriguing and very kind of exciting to me, even as a young person, to be able to
Wow.
do that. And that's kind of what he conveyed to me when we talked.
It really gets, I mean, communication is so, it's interesting. I was just the other night in real time as we're recording, I facilitated for I think the way that because I want to maintain kind of anonymity, but I was called in as a facilitator so that a group of people could understand the needs of another group of people. And we got, as we were talking about, because in my work as a facilitator, what's fun is bringing out, like, playing games to bring things out. And one of the games brought out dozens of ways that the group that one of the groups wished the other group could interact with them. Maybe put it that way. And in that, we got to talking about communication. We got to talking about specifically literacy was a really big and important feature in this. And the director of uh, the director who had called me in shared a story about uh, when they were young and they had learned to decode print, right? They could decode print, but they didn't have comprehension, right? So, but everybody around them was like, "Oh, you're good. You know how to read." And they grew up sort of feeling like, "But I don't know what this means." Like, so
Mhm.
it's like it goes beyond, communication goes so far beyond the written symbols or the you know the that sounds we make in our throat, right?
Yes.
Or whatever. And or it sounds like it's on that deep level for you.
And I would say yes, and having the opportunity to even travel to different countries and different cultures, I even see how much communication is valued. Even it's such a universal thing because we do more communicating non-verbally than we realize. And
Mm,
so most of our communication is nonverbal. And it's so fascinating how you can still have this language barrier, yet still be able to communicate, yet still be able to share, yet still be able to provide, that human need of being able to communicate, that touch that comes with being able to share. So literacy is a very big component of language
mm,
and speech language pathology. So definitely it's I get it. That whole decoding and encoding part. Yeah. Or
yeah.
if you have been in a foreign country and you're frustrated because you don't know the language and you don't know the culture, and you can feel, I often are transported into those moments, is this is exactly how the people I work with feel when they're struggling with communicating an issue, a concept, the same kind of thing. So it's really part of who we are as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really fun to bring in travel and other, right? Like, uh, because we can, I have this memory of going to, when I was in college, I studied in Italy for a semester and I went and found, some relatives because I have one of my grandparents is Italian. And I went to the place where I traveled to the place where he lived until he was 12 and got to meet some of his relatives. And so it was my grandfather. And he, as an adult, he worked for, I believe it was Rolls-Royce, and he worked in the sort of like airplane engine building department.
Mm.
I don't know what he did there, But anyway, one of one of the relatives that I met signaled that he knew who was my grandfather because he made his arms go out
Oh,
like
that's
an
so
airplane. He was like,
neat.
"Oh, is it is it this one?" And I was like, "It is. That's my grandfather." Yeah.
That's so cool.
Right. And it's so playful.
Yep. Yep. And it lets you know that just in that moment, you conveyed so much information and you made a connection, even non-verbally. And that's, to me, that's the power of communication.
Yeah.
There's a t-shirt that I bought. I'm a speech language pathologist. What's your superpower? And and I think that it says I help people communicate. Well, yeah. So I said, yeah, there are days when I feel just like that. It's a superpower that I've been able to help somebody communicate. So definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Can you take us a little bit into your journey of what it's been like? Because I feel like there's two parts to this. One is becoming, you have this wonderful connection as you're a young candy striper, and now you have a career that you're really excited about and that you're getting into, and I think there's a PhD, you're at sort of a really, really high level of
Mhm.
experience and knowledge as you're teaching, right? But feels like there's another aspect to this, which is, I mean, maybe call it entrepreneurship, because you now are you the dean? You are.
Not quite. I'm a director, division director, and I'm right under a dean. And it's been a different vibe, if I can use that terminology, in
Love it.
terms of that. And I think back on my journey as a beginning clinician with a bachelor's degree. Now it's master's entry level is the minimum education level.
Hmm.
So I'm really dating myself. But during that time, I worked in the public schools, and I remember feeling so proud and so excited about being this educator and helping these students. And I come from a background of educators. Both my parents were um, teachers, started as teachers. So
Mm,
I guess you could say it's kind of in our blood, but it was really exciting to be able to start my career there. And I did. And I
mm.
worked with middle schoolers, which I never thought I would enjoy, but I did. And
Okay, let me stop you there. What
yeah,
did you enjoy about the middle schoolers?
or what did I not enjoy? I
Either, yeah,
remember
either one. I'd love to hear about
I
both, really.
remember one of the exciting things about this was wanting to work with children. That was
Mm,
my initial desire. So I was very excited about being in the school system and working. And I'll never forget the first day she says, "Oh, we have you assigned to these middle schools." And I remember thinking I was about to burst out in tears because I did not want to work with middle schoolers. And I remember talking to my mom, who was a junior high teacher at that time.
hmm.
And she said, "Oh, you'll love it. There's just such great, young people to work with." I was like, And you got to remember, I'm just a couple years short of 18. So we're moving into
Okay.
this. I'm just out of school, out of college.
Yeah.
And I also was assigned to a high school. Oh, it's a whole nother world. But once I really got into where they were and how they were just really trying to figure themselves out, it
Hmm.
became, it was fun. It was enjoyable. And they were at a different level because often if they still needed services at a middle school, they were language disordered or had some challenges that we worked with. So I enjoyed working and kind of discovering me in this field along with this group of children. So it
Mm,
was really fascinating. I had the best group of mentors ever. So we had these teachers that worked with students that were special needs, and they just kind of took me under their wing. I remember I was very young and told me the ropes and how to work. And then I had a great mentor as a speech language pathologist who's still one of my most treasured mentors to this day. And I really felt that they helped bridge that gap that maybe a lot of new teachers or new persons that are in the field don't necessarily have.
mm,
And I think they made the transition so much easier and so much more fun when I initially did as I call my time in the school system. And most speech pathologists work in school system. About 50% of us do work in school systems. So that was, I guess, my initial step. And as I began to work through the field, I said, I want a little bit more education. I want to learn a little bit more. And that's when I went back to school.
hmm.
And I pursued a master's degree during that. And it was a time where the school system was open to that. And so that was really kind of fascinating as I began to learn more about the field and more about things that you could do as a speech language pathologist, my curiosity developed and changed. So I began to work with adults. And I was able to get into that. I worked in long-term care. And one of the things that I really, really enjoyed about working with adults is most of them had already had the power of communication and had lost it.
Oh.
So they were persons who had had strokes, maybe Parkinson's patients. They had been in car accidents.
Mm.
So they had had the power of communication and lost it. And the reward to give it back was so strong. That is the population I fell in love with working with. They
Wow.
were so appreciative of what you did. And it was a little different than kids, because often the children may not have had the gift, but the adults did. They had that gift, they had that power, and they had lost it. So being able to give back to them was so rewarding. And that's when my love for the adult population kind of grew. And
Wow.
I began to work in long-term care facilities, hospitals, inpatient rehabilitation, outpatient rehab. And during that time, I started getting students. One of the requirements to be a speech language pathologist is that you have to have so many hours, clock hours of actual hands-on practice, similar to a student teaching, but a little more intense.
Mm.
The lights have gone out here. And so that's when I really found that I enjoyed working with students. So I enjoyed seeing them when they came initially very frightened, not knowing what to do, especially with an adult population. Somehow adults really terrify students in terms of working with them if
Mm.
they have communication challenges. And I began to really, really enjoy working with the students. And so I like to tell the story that I had a friend when I moved, because there is such a small population of speech language pathologists, we usually know each other.
Mhm.
And it's even a smaller population of minority speech language pathologists. So when I relocated, I one of the things I was told is call so and so they'll know you're in the area, because then we do that mentoring. And that's exactly what I did. And the first thing they said, oh, great, we need you to teach an adjunct class. I can't teach this. I've just been practicing for 50, I can't teach it. But I said, okay, we'll give it a chance. So that's where the teaching kind of started me,
Mm.
adjuncting. And I love to tell the story. So I'm working at a hospital, pretty large hospital in the city, well known, and I was working with students, and they were coming from one of the local universities, and they came they came one day and they said, Miss Miller, a position is opening at the university and we think you should apply. So I thought this was hilarious. I said, okay. And I said, these are students that are telling me to apply. They thought I would be perfect for that. And I kind of brushed it off until another student contacted me that I taught previously and said the same thing. It's an opening. We think you should apply. And I was like, we? So I said, okay, maybe there's something to this. And I should kind of listen, because I don't think things like that just kind of happen haphazardly. So
Mm.
I did apply for a teaching position at a university, and I got it because we're able to do some clinical work without a doctorate degree. And so I did that and thought life was just completely great and wonderful, and enjoyed not only teaching this, but now being able to have that contact with students every day and helping
Mhm.
them to become speech language pathologists. I ended up going back to school, and I'll share, in my 50s, to get a doctorate degree on a dare.
I love
It was a
that.
dare, and I
Oh,
laugh
I'd love to hear
now.
that story.
And I've shared it that it was three of us. We were all speech pathologists, and we had gone back and forth about going back to school, and we're too old and that kind of thing. And we just kind of talked about it. So we said, okay, we had a really good friend mentor who was the director of one of the speech path programs in the country. And we talked to her a lot about our fears and just kind of overall. So we made a pact, three of us, that we were going to apply. for
Wow.
for a PhD program. But the catch was we were not going to tell anyone. Only the persons that needed to be involved will be mentioned, and we weren't even going to talk about it amongst ourselves.
Wow.
It was like a secret pact. So I said, okay, we all agreed that that's what we're going to do, and we did. And it was a bit of a daunting task. I hadn't taken the test you take for grad school,
Yeah.
GREs. I didn't even know where you find those, and getting up enough courage to get someone to write your letter and all of that. But whew, and I had a couple people to look over my letter of intent and all that good stuff. So I had my packet ready, sent my packet off, and waited. So when I heard and that I had been accepted, I was like, whoa, really exciting. And of course, I called my friends I made the pact with, and I said, I got accepted. What happened? Did you guys get accepted? And they said, oh, we didn't even fill out the application.
Oh, wow.
So with that, I said, all right, again, there's something to this, and I need to move on it. And so that's how I ended up in school working on a doctorate with folks that were much younger than I. Some of my professors were much younger than I, and forging ahead. So
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, what comes through again and again in your sort of journey of becoming
Mhm.
a professor, uh, someone with a doctorate, is I see you're waving to get the
Yeah,
lights
I'm
back on.
waving. I thought my light, there they are.
There we go. Yay. um, is that there's mentorship all along for you. Like there's encouragement. There's people who it sounds like a lovely community for that.
It really is. It really is. And that's one of the things that I think keeps us going as professionals.
Mm,
There is a strong mentorship. I seek out to opportunities to be a mentor. And I'm very appreciative that I kind of fell into my mentors they have, and they've been honestly through every situation professionally that I could possibly mention. I don't make a move without talking to them. They
mm.
are now retiring at various beaches, enjoying life. I'll still I'll still call. I'll still check in. And I think it's really important. And on the other hand, I have students and former students that still do that with me. They'll
Wow.
call and they'll check, and it's really humorous. They'll say, he's asked me to marry him. What should I do? I said, I don't know. But that's how the mentor relationship has expanded into that. And I get pictures of their kids and their life milestones. So it's also a really fun kind of spot to be into.
Wow, yeah. And even from students you get, I mean, call it mentorship, right? Or encouragement to like,
Yeah,
you know, expand into this new area, like try something new that we think you'd enjoy or whatever and be good at. And, like,
yeah. It's kind of funny, but yeah.
yeah. Oh, I love that. Um, and now you are the director of the Communication Sciences and Disorders Division at Communication Services and Disorders Division
You got
at
it, sciences. Mhm.
Sciences, Communication Sciences and Disorders Division at on the Leesburg campus of the Shenandoah University. Is that
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, take us into that.
Well, I started to feel a little restless, if I could say that. I finished my degree, and it's also a time in my life when my both of my parents had were deceased. So I
Mm,
was kind of finding my way. If you've ever been a caregiver, and I was a small one for a while, and if you
mm,
had your kind of life, I don't want to say, but it was kind of based on their needs and what they were doing. So I was attached that way. And my father had passed away. My mother had passed a couple of years before. So it's kind of looking at what's next with life. What are we going to do? I'm single. I don't have any children. So the world was my oyster. I could do whatever I want, but what was next? And so I started having, if you've ever had that feeling of restlessness, like something is missing. So I started to kind of think about it. And I was pretty settled where I was. Life was good. And I remember talking to one of my mentors, and I said, I just don't want to have to move. And she said, I think you're going to have to move. I think it's, time. So I started looking, and I laugh now as I think about it. I said, oh well, I'm gonna pull out our our journals and our where we can find jobs for speech pathologists. And I said, I'm going to only apply for places that speak to me. So, and that's what I did,
Wow.
which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of places that spoke to me, and none of them were near where I was living. They were 200 or 300 miles away, or four. But I mentally, excuse me, I was preparing myself for this. So I started looking, and it was in the midst of COVID. So that was made it another bit of a challenge.
Hmm.
But I kind of really enjoyed that process. I enjoyed the process of seeing what other folks had to offer, how they saw this. I knew I had always wanted to start a program from scratch, which sounds hilarious, but it was something that I thought would be really great to do because I felt like I knew what worked and what didn't work, having been a student, having worked on the other end where students are trying to get to being a
Hmm.
practitioner in a clinic, and then actually having worked at a university with students. So I felt like I had enough knowledge as a professional that I could now say, this is what would make a program work.
Wow.
And so that's what I looked. So I looked for universities that were looking to start a speech language pathology program. And that's how I did my the other ones that were established, they had some good positions, but I wanted one where I could start create it completely from scratch.
Hmm.
And so that I guess that search took about maybe about a year and a half. And Shenandoah wasn't a top choice, but they woo me so well. The people were so friendly, and I enjoyed what they were. And the one thing that I really, really, really liked is they already had a school of health professions. So everybody knew what a speech language pathologist did.
Hmm.
And that's usually one of the biggest challenges is trying to get people to understand what you do and why you need things this way. So that was so rewarding. It's like, oh, you're a speech language pathologist. They knew exactly what they did because they had physical therapists, occupational therapists, and we work together in rehabilitation institute. So that was really nice to do that. They woo me. What can I say?
Wow.
And here I am, packed up my goodies with lots of help and put it all in a big old moving truck and relocated about 250 miles.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And so um that's relatively recent, eh? Because if you
It's
if you
been
started
this
in
is
COVID.
my fourth year. So I worked really from the beginning. The way our accrediting body and things go is you pretty much have to have things in place, and they approve, okay, this looks like this will be a good program to get your
Hmm.
accreditation status. So I worked alone for about 3 years, and then I got to start hiring faculty, which has been even more delightful.
Oh, I bet.
It's like lots of moving pieces, and you can say this one will fit right, it fit good here, and it'll fit good here, and you're hoping that everyone will mesh and get the vision that you've created, and kind of been support. So the first couple of years, I spent a lot of time writing curriculum, getting initial accreditation through various accrediting bodies before you go. It's like you have to get through like your university, then the region, then nationally, which is through the American Speech and Hearing Association.
Mm.
So there's those steps. Um, did the creation of the courses, the curriculum, all the things that come with creating the initial components of a program, and all that. And the site visit to see if everything was in place, and just kind of a lot of different, like I said, moving pieces. And we opened this past fall with our first cohort of students. We have 10 students. We're very excited, and they're a very diverse group of young ladies who are excited to be here, and they offer so much to the program and to the field. So we're really pumped
Wow.
about it.
Oh, I bet. I can hear it. I can hear it in
We
your
are very
voice.
excited. We offer a free clinic here for persons who have communication disorders. So we opened that last week. So we're extra excited.
Wow.
We have folks coming in. So we have a variety of persons that have had strokes, children that are coming in. We have a faculty member that specializes in transgender
Hmm.
voice. And so we have transgender clients that we'll be working with, helping them to create the voices that are close to what they identify themselves as. So
Mm.
we're excited because it's a highly specialized area. So we do have that transgender clinic. We work with Parkinson's patients. We have been trained to work with the Parkinson's Foundation and using their program that they have. We're
Wow.
hoping to get a Parkinson's choir going. Shenandoah is known for their music conservatory all around the world. So we're hoping to work collaboratively with some of the music folks. I've already started doing some research and things with them to help get that off the ground, Parkinson's choir. So we have a lot of things that we're working toward. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I have so many questions. I mean, just wanting to take this moment to celebrate you.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
well, yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I have goosebumps listening because what you are doing is offering, right? We started off talking about communication and how it feels to be heard and how it feels to be able to get your message across and to do it for all these folks in all of the different ways that that shows up is so beautiful. Like I think until this conversation, I hadn't really thought about the ways that we could be challenged in
Mhm.
terms of communicating. And I think especially helping someone have the voice that they themselves would identify as is like amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty exciting. It really is. Just on so many levels. I mean, I could go on and on with wonderful stories of folks who, got their voices back, the
Mhm.
students that didn't think they could do it and they are able to do that. And it's just so rewarding. No matter where I've found myself, it's been a really rewarding element to it.
Mm, mhm. Um, I mm, I want to share this, but I want to keep them anonymous.
Okay.
Someone very close to me
Mhm.
was a wonderful singer all of their life.
Mm.
And about probably 2 years ago now, uh, was in a biking accident that where the strap on their helmet basically injured their vocal cords.
Mm.
And I mean, they've done a really wonderful job with it, but there's been a massive identity shift for this person in terms of like, can't even sing happy birthday now. You know what I mean? Or like that feeling of lack, I guess, of like I used to be able to do this and now I can't. And what's been really beautiful is to watch them grow through that and to realize that like maybe they do it in a different register or in a different way, but they can still these things are still accessible. Like earlier in this conversation, you had mentioned helping people get their voice back, and I was like, how does that work? Like, how can you do that? And here's an example from my own life of someone who's done it. Um, yeah, I think it's at the root of everything, and yet it's something that we maybe well, there's the potential to take it for granted. I think
Oh,
if you
definitely.
know.
By all means, if you've ever talked to somebody on the phone, you say, "You okay? You don't sound like yourself."
Hmm.
So imagine just losing your voice. Several years ago, I had some surgery on my voice, on my neck. And I remember one of the things was like, oh my gosh, if I lose my voice. And I
Yeah.
remember my brother being really concerned. He said, what do speech pathologists do if they lose their voice? I was like, yeah, what do we do as people? You feel that. And I remember feeling, I said, this is how some of my patients feel, with that. And, you know, um, thank God, thank goodness there were no issues with the surgery and everything came out okay. But, it really again shifted my thought processes to how valuable that gift is. And, even in the communication piece, everyone doesn't necessarily get their audible voice back, but we still give them the power to communicate through sign language, through technology that's really been advanced now. So there are
Mm,
lots of different ways that there's communication. It's just our job to make sure we maximize it and give it back to
hmm.
a population of people who have not had it or have lost it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, this is it's a little bit of a departure from what we're talking about. And
Okay.
and this will certainly date myself, but I worked frequently with kids who were um I'm trying to think of I don't remember. I mean, kids with autism, kids with
Mhm.
cerebral palsy, kids with some different modalities of challenge, maybe say.
Um,
And we used we used a little program called Board Maker to
it's still around. It's
is it
still
still there?
around.
It was so like I can remember working with a child who was selectively mute, which means that a kid with that or a person with that can talk and does speak in some areas, but doesn't feel empowered to speak all
Right.
the time. And so I remember one of the things that we could do for them was give a little card with a picture of a potty on it so that they could be empowered to say, I need to use the bathroom, and
Right.
they could hand this to you and you would know. And yeah, I felt like Boardmaker was really wonderful for helping kids feel like they could communicate or could, feel seen.
and and that is what one of our jobs is, to help you feel seen. And of course that's through the art of communication, the power of communication. It's one of the things that makes us a little different than the animals, is our form of communication.
Yeah.
That voice and that power that's we have to communicate. So it's valuable. It's
Yeah.
valuable. And then you attach the voice and how you sound, and that voice sounds. It's part of your identity and who you are. Because you've often heard people speak and say, "Oh, that's Jane," or "There's
Yeah.
Bob talking," and you've never seen them, or not days pre-caller ID. You pick up the phone and you know immediately that voice,
Yeah.
because it's part of that person's identity. So
Yeah.
imagine losing that, or like you said, that shifting, and you just feeling like you lost something major. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how you identify yourself. Yeah.
Yep. Um, and how wonderful that the work that you do helps people get that back, helps
Yeah.
restore it,
Yeah. And now I can teach a whole generation that they can help somebody get it back. That's
Yeah.
exciting to me. So yeah.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Like, if you look back, could you, hmm, was there a part of you that would have wanted to create what you've created in terms of the at Shenandoah?
Not initially. As the start of my career, it was not like, this was not, as they say, my end game. I never would have anticipated that I would have found working in higher education even exciting,
Hmm.
because I enjoyed the clinical part of the profession so much. I enjoyed working with patients, working with clients, working with colleagues to help get a patient that, couldn't walk or talk back to work or home. So I could not have imagined that you would take me out of that and I would not be able to do that clinical part, that I would enjoy the higher ed. So no. I never really saw myself as a teacher. So the fact that it's come full circle is even more hilarious to me.
Mm,
But like I said, both of my parents were started their careers as teachers. Um, and that's why one of the things I like to share with my students is never limit yourself, because you don't know where your path is going to lead you. So
hmm.
something that you just are so sure you don't want to do or see or be as a student, it changes. Your life changes. There are different things. So I tell them, I said, this is a safe space to try a lot of different things, because you don't know what's going to happen. You have a desire to work in this area, for example, with this population, but sometimes a job doesn't come around in that population. You might have to work in this other population. And the fact that you have been trained in that gives you an upper hand to do that. So um I don't think at all that I don't know what I thought, but I know it wasn't higher ed, teaching college students, definitely at a master's level, how to do what I love. Never entered my mind. No.
It's really interesting to me too, because I feel like mind, heart, intuition, maybe like what you it feels like a lot of what you've kind of shared about your own journey today has been of tuning into something that isn't uh intellect, but that's maybe deeper than that, you know?
I totally agree with that. I even haven't shared a lot of the other stories that I've had in terms of how I relocated in different spots based on things that many would say, oh, that's just kind of haphazard. And I was like, no, it's a little bit more than that. The person that hired me for my first job is at a college I had met several years before, and it had been a chance meeting, and it had been at something that a mentor had prompted me to go to. I didn't want to go, but I went because she is my mentor. And when she told me to do something and be there, I did. And
Yeah.
it literally changed my life. And I shared a cab with this dean. And we just talked about, family and things. And I remember as she was getting out of the cab, she gave me her business card and said, you should move to this state. And she said, I'll hire you. You're perfect for a university. And of course, that stayed in my head for years, because it was a number of years later that she did indeed hire me at that university.
Wow.
Um, but it had been that chance encounter that planted the seed that even got me thinking that that was a possibility of something
Wow.
that I could do. When I relocated, I literally was up one night, couldn't sleep, and I saw this job on the computer. And I said, oh, this sounds like something fun to apply for. Never even thinking I would even get an interview.
Hmm.
But it was something I was doing because I was up in the middle of the night. And I had done it before previously and never gotten any responses. So there
Wow.
that, I don't consider just kind of haphazard. There definitely is something greater than myself working
Yeah.
orchestrating. But so yeah.
And well, I love this too because the beauty of it is it's something, you know, I don't know, ethereal. I don't want to get too spiritual, but like, I, it, uh, but that's not just outside of us. I feel like it's in us too, and tuning into that and being able to, um, I'm a painter. I'm an artist, and
Mhm.
one of my mentors, um, was recently sharing about something that she calls I believe it's Putterer's syndrome, which is when you really want to paint, but you find yourself doing a million other things besides painting.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you just get distracted or pulled or oh yeah, I better do that. Oh that and this feels similar but opposite because what's happened is you've not gotten distracted, right? Like you still were able to tune into those
Mhm.
rhythms or those, impressions and go with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think looking back now, I didn't necessarily realize what they were. I just know a lot of times it felt right,
Hmm.
or I needed to do this. Sometimes it didn't make rhyme or reason. I know when I made the 250-mile move, my brother, he was short of like, are you crazy? It's time to retire. And it's like, what are you doing? And I really couldn't answer that, except I felt like, it was a calling. I needed to do it. It needed to be done. I want to make my mark, if I could say that. And
Yeah, what an opportunity, right?
yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
always felt that if I didn't make that move, and it's been several times in my life that I've really pondered that, I would always wonder what would have happened if I had moved, or what would have happened if I relocated.
Mm,
And I never wanted to feel like that. So I said it'd
wow.
be a lot better is I did it and didn't really work out. But then I said that's okay too. And once you are comfortable with that, I think it makes the change easier. That if it doesn't work out, it's not the worst in the world. You learn from it, and if nothing else, I won't do that again. And that's a good lesson.
Yeah. It's sort of taking the step and finding out rather than like not taking it and wishing or worrying
Right.
about,
And that's what I never wanted to feel like that. Like, what would have
yeah.
happened if I had, moved to Texas? Or what would have happened if, I'd done that and I wanted to be on the other side. Well, I did move to Texas and this is what happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
When I was a part of my story is longtime listeners might remember that I used to need a wheelchair. I lost the ability to walk, and Katrina, we've talked about this a little bit. And so that was in 2011. I need 2011, 2012 were really the wheelchair years, call them. And in 2023, I had rehabilitated myself. It was more than my body, but myself enough to where I could solo hike across northern England. And the thing that was really interesting was I didn't know if I could do it. Like I didn't do it because I remember, in fact, I remember my husband saying, somewhere in the middle of the trail, I said, I can't believe how much I'm learning, about myself or about this whole thing. And he said, right, because you didn't go there knowing everything. You learn on the way.
you don't. You
Yeah.
don't. And that's how I felt a lot of times coming here. I laugh now because I am a woman of faith. And there were many times I was sitting in front of the computers like I have absolutely no idea how to write this curriculum, how to write this course. I really need some inspiration because I don't know. Sometimes you get up and go get a cup of coffee or pace around or read something and you would get that inspiration to move, but I just remember coming and say, I don't know how on earth I'm going to do this. It's in my head. And I love doing interviews because my favorite one was, well, what's a typical day look like? And I'll actually say, I have absolutely no idea how a typical day is going to look. I can tell you how it looks in my head, and you can take it from there, but we haven't lived it yet. So we don't know what
Yeah.
a typical day would look like. And in my head, it looks like this. But we'll find out. And that was one of the I really enjoyed saying that because everything's right now is in my head that I put on paper, and we'll see how it goes. So that was
Wow.
truth. I have no idea, and so
Yeah.
I totally can relate to what you're saying because I didn't know I could write curriculum like I did. I didn't know I could put my thoughts together to form a program. I didn't know that I could select students from across the country that would be a part of this. I didn't know I could attract faculty members that wanted to come and work with you. So you don't.
Yeah. There's only one way to find out, right? Like,
Only one way to find it. I think that's life. And
yeah.
the sad part are the times when we don't take that chance, or because we're fearful, or the first thing we'll say is, I don't know how to do that. And trust me, there were a lot of days I said, I don't know. During the process, I tore my rotator cuff.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, this is all we need now. Now we're trying to heal from an injury and create and keep our sanity. It's like a lot of things.
Yeah. It was yeah. Yeah.
But you don't know till you do it.
Yeah. Right.
You
You
don't.
don't know till you do it. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so we have a little time left
Okay.
and kind of as if you do, I'd better
I
I bet
do.
okay,
I
cool, cool.
do. I've set aside time. Mhm.
Cool. Awesome. Because I was curious about well, there is a really lovely picture of you on your website, which is katrinaemiller.com. The link will be in the show notes for those of you watching and listening. And you're reading a book
Yeah.
so there's two significant books. So I wanted to start with this one first. I love this. You're reading a book, and the book is called Anatomy for Speech Pathology. And like it must be a pretty important book for you to be reading on your website.
It's kind of funny because I wanted to have something that was symbolic of the field and
Hmm.
what I did. And that is really, oh my gosh, I'm dating myself. The very first textbook I purchased as a speech language pathology student in undergrad.
Wow.
And so that's
Yeah.
the very one of the it was my very first class that I took as my future speech pathologist. So it has significance with me for that because it was at the beginning of my journey. Yes, I still have that textbook, and it's the foundation of what I do. And it's the first thing you learn is about the anatomy of the speech and hearing mechanism. And it's a different than your general anatomy because it's focusing on those structures that are unique. And so that's the uniqueness of the book for me.
Mm,
Plus, I knew you could read it from the website if I was holding it, and you would see that it was very significant for the field. So
yeah.
that's the rationale for that book on my website.
Well, I love like again the serendipity comes to me. Like it is in very big clear text, anatomy for speech pathology. And you know, you were just saying that you really wanted something that would communicate immediately the field is, what we're doing here basically. And like here's this book that not only is so resonant for you for so long, but also happens to have that quality. It's like,
That
okay.
anybody that is not in the field would get it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's that book. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's super cool.
Mhm.
And then the other book that comes up is called Soap Notes. I love this so much. Soap Notes, Cleansing Thoughts for Healthcare Workers. And that is by you.
Yes, it's my book of devotionals. My mother loved devotionals, and she often gave them as gifts. And it seemed like she found all the little devotionals you can, the kind you put in your purse and your pocketbook and that. So I always wanted to write a devotional. And
Mm.
because of my love for the field, I have learned so much about myself, the field, and just human nature. So each of it's a collection of devotionals that are completely based on my career as a speech language pathologist, things I've learned. There's a little bit of humor. Um, some may make you cry, but that's been the journey that I've taken as a professional. So the pun on soap notes, anyone who is in the medical field knows that those are the wonderful notes you write after you've seen your patients and your clients. And each of the letters stand for a specific part of the note that you need to write. But I also use the pun of soap cleansing and washing because I felt that, and I wanted the devotionals to be things that kind of refreshed you. Once you
Mm.
read them, read one, it's like, oh, and you feel refreshed. So I wanted it to be a cleansing that you didn't necessarily have the residue that you can have from work or those rough times that we have, but that it would be a cleansing thought for you to help you as you read that, particularly in the healthcare field.
Wow.
Mm.
Um, I did not grow up. I would say that the word devotional as a noun is not something that I have understood, but you've communicated it so clearly, right? It sounds like the ones that your mom would get or pass on or whatever or give were like a faith-based.
Yeah, they were faith-based, and it just kind of depended on the audience.
Mm,
They were could be motivational,
mm,
all types of encouragement. There's types of devotionals for mothers, which tend to have encouraging readings and sayings for women who may be in the motherhood time. And
mm.
they're you can almost find a kind of a book of meditations is a good way to describe it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are
Yeah.
different audiences you would write them for. Some of them do have scripture in them, and then others have popular sayings or affirmations that
Hmm.
can go with them. There's just such a variety of different ones, and you can different populations that you can read them and have them for. But my population was, of course, healthcare workers. And again, I wanted it to be a thing that, and it's mixed with some scripture and some affirmations, more affirmations and things that kind of cleanse you. So
Wow.
so there's all kinds of stories, and just experiences that I've had throughout my career that I wanted to share. Yeah.
You know what's really interesting, and this might be new information for you. I don't know. We have a mutual friend uh named Gail.
Yes.
And she, you know, is a very, very close friend of yours and has been since forever, right? Gail Clanton.
Ever.
Um, she's coming on the show in yeah, well, I don't know where it will be in real time, like in sort of when this episode will be in the timeline or the feed compare, you know, regarding or in relation to that one. But Gail's coming back on the show to
Mhm.
share about her book and the
Yeah.
writing process. And um, I came into this conversation today sort of not knowing that you'd written a book, but feeling like, wouldn't it be fun to also be able to talk with you, Katrina, about, for example, the process or like the reasoning behind it. Um and I think we've heard a little bit, about why you wrote it and
Mhm.
I mean your whole the body language, right? And the energy about it is so positive and
Right.
so, I mean, affirming. It seems like it's really from the heart.
Yeah.
Um, can you take us a little bit into the writing journey? Like, what was that like for you?
That's funny. Gail had a lot to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
He offered a class, pretty much write your book or write your story. And because I'm so supportive, I said, okay, I'll be in your class. I've got this book of devotionals, although she'll joke and say I was not a good student. And even though I had a finished product. And so I can honestly say that I had a writer to guide me through the writing process. I have written academic writing, which is completely different than personal or nonfiction type writing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was different, shifting my mindset even for
Mm,
that. And because I had wanted to do a book of devotionals or meditations, I had started keeping little snippets anyway. When I would have an interesting story or something that occurred, I would write it out anyway, kind of a form of journaling, if I could say that.
mm,
And so, as a member of her class, she guided us through the process of the writing. And I must say that that was the really challenging part because I knew I had these stories and I knew I had these things I wanted to share, and I knew I wanted to link it to a positive um thing, affirmation, or even a scriptural reference, and just being able to convey what I felt or what I thought could have been challenging. It's one thing to put it down or to write it and then someone else to look at it and say, well, I'm not quite getting what you're saying,
mm.
or you need to expand on this. So that was a challenging part for me because you know what you want to say and you know the message that you want to convey, but it's not always being heard. That communication piece again, or
Yeah.
interpreted the way that you want it to be interpreted. And a lot of times that's okay. That makes it even more creative. So that was a bit of a challenge. And you always think it's going to be easy. You've got this set of things already written, but then comes the hard part of putting it together. What order do you put it in? Especially with the way, since it wasn't a story, what are the most important things? I remember writing and I said, something's missing. And so I added the very first therapy session I had is in there in terms of, how I felt, how I think the child felt.
Mm.
And that was a part of my story that I had not really thought about that I felt like needed to be told, through those pages. So um it was a fun process because I did it with my BFF, and we could laugh, and she goes, that was a really good story. But it was also difficult because you're also exposing yourself, depending on how you're writing and what you're writing. They're my thoughts, and they may not be appreciated like you think they're going to be appreciated.
Yeah.
And so you have a product and then you say, okay, tell me what you think. And then it makes you very vulnerable if you've
Yeah.
ever been in that situation. So I gave it to my brother. It's only two of us. And so we're pretty close. And I said, okay, he bought it, and he said, okay, I'm gonna read it and I'll tell you what I think, sis. And it was really interesting because he didn't say it to me. He wrote it out, what he thought
Wow.
about the book, which I thought was a little more intimate
Mm. Mm-hmm.
about taking the time to put it on paper, and he could really express how he felt. And I was really appreciative of that and getting that feedback from him from that. So it's kind of I understand how authors feel because then you think it's great, and then you put it out there and okay, it's out there.
I I've written a couple of books and I remember with the first one being like, I would just wish it was perfect.
Right.
I just wish it was perfect. I want it to be perfect. And like as you were talking and share, what a beautiful share, first of all, about that experience because I could feel it. Like,
Okay.
you know, that vulnerability is so I think it's Brene Brown has
Hmm.
years and years ago, I saw a TED Talk. I believe it was hers, where she talked about vulnerability and shame being two sides
Mm.
of the same coin,
Oh,
and that
wow.
what we do when we're vulnerable and instead we're, what was reflected back to us was something that made us feel shame is we want to, this is her, and I'm probably paraphrasing a lot, but is we don't like the feeling of shame, right? It is a cause of suffering. And so what we'll do is we will try to numb ourselves. And like that idea of sort of the numbing behaviors, I see that as, as part of my story was really interesting to encounter and realize what it was. When I could, you know, choose to not feel shame or to sort of let that feeling go by maybe and be okay being vulnerable. I mean, I wrote this sounds like it was so close to your heart, and that is also something that I feel similar about. The memoir that I wrote is it I tried to share everything I went through as I was going from a person who felt incredibly trapped in a
Mm.
body that, didn't work how
Yeah.
it was supposed to, or and really what it all, like, I needed to shift my identity, and I did. I was able to kind of grow into this identity where I feel empowered and I'm not minding everybody else's business and trying to take over my kids' lives or that sort of thing, and instead really just celebrating. But it's a messy story. And so I wrote it, and I decided I really did. Yes, I really did want to talk about sexual identity. Yes, I really did want to talk about peeing in the woods. Like, I really wanted to take people into what this actual journey has been like. But then to go and hand it to people and say, what do you think about this? Right.
What do you
Katrina.
think?
Yeah, exactly. And just like you, receiving back something that where you feel really held, where people say, "Oh, wow, like thank you for writing this," or that what's reflected back is just, it's been so interesting, and I'm so grateful for that. I mean, I,
Yeah.
I remember receiving some of that feedback and saying like, "Okay, I don't even have to publish it at this point because I feel like I've gotten what I
What you need
what
from
I
it.
need."
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you put it out there. It's just, it's different. And then I felt like I was speaking my heart in a lot of things. I was being very vulnerable. I have, instances where, it wasn't a good relationship with a doctor in terms at the
Mm,
hospital, or, one of my patients died. And so I
mm,
felt like I was even showing my heart, or
yeah.
that time it didn't work and how I dealt with it and what I did. So it makes you, like you said, quite vulnerable in what you're writing and what you're sharing. So yeah.
And I think that's what life is for.
Yeah.
Like, what a wonderful way of communicating and and inspiring,
Right.
you know?
Right. That we get through in
Yeah.
spite of.
Yep. 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 Wow. Well, I mean, what a wonderful hour we've gotten to spend together. Thank you,
Yes, I've
Katrina.
enjoyed it.
Is there um is there anything coming up that you'd like to share just as we're wrapping up?
Um, just I think we talked about it a little bit. It's never too late. Don't think that that dream or that hope that you have, it's too late to pursue it. I feel like I'm an example of that. And that life is to be lived. Take that chance. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Life is to be lived. Beautiful.
Yep.
Uh, well, I mean, thank you so much for being here.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. It's been delightful. I feel like we've been on the front porch drinking lemonade.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Um, and I want to say to our listeners as well, and people who are watching in video, thank you for being here very much. You can find Katrina at katrinaemiller.com. And I'm going to make a note to also go directly to the book.
Okay.
Because I think that would be, some folks might want to just grab the book, in addition to visiting your website. So that's where you can find Katrina. And I don't know. I mean, I'm just so filled with gratitude about
Well, that's
this.
wonderful. I've really enjoyed our conversation, Kay. It's been great.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Me too. Um, all right. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. Thank you, everybody, for watching and for listening. And I'm Kay, and we will see you next time.